Hi, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the soundbites. We have three amazing guests with us today, but I'm going to hold off introducing them. I will, however, say hello to Ben Kinsley, who's co-host, co-producer.
Yeah, I have a consulting firm called Imperium Advisors, and kind of started out as a policy consulting and development group, and quickly realized it's not enough to have a good idea, you also have to sell that idea. So from that spawned a whole bunch of different services that we offer around communications, digital strategy, social media, and of course government relations. So a whole bunch of different
Getting
things.
better than I am at this. Anyway, before we introduce our guests, we have a really special treat for you. I got permission from Darren Perrin at WCAX to show a video story that they did on the USS Vermont called Inside the USS Vermont. And it's a magnificent story, and we'll be talking about it as soon as the video ends.
Secrecy surrounds submarines to keep crew members safe from enemy attack, and their missions are kept under wraps while underwater.
The Secretary of the Navy names submarines after cities or states, and one now bears the name Vermont. Tonight, an exclusive look inside the nation's most sophisticated sub ever. You can't help but notice the seemingly non-stop trains and boat traffic in the coastal community of New London and Groton, Connecticut. But what you won't see is tucked inside this highly guarded building on the Thames River. Until now.
This right here is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
It's the United States' most advanced attack submarine being built by General Dynamics Electric Boat. It's similar to this sub, but better. It's fast, quiet, and nearly invisible underwater, undetectable to the nation's adversaries. Technology that's so top secret, Channel 3 News is the only media allowed to see it.
And everything in this area is good for filming.
And take you inside. This is what will be the USS Vermont.
The human eyeball is our greatest threat in some cases.
Henry Ronke will command the sub.
We can conduct anti-submarine warfare, anti-surface warfare if necessary, mine warfare. We can support special operations forces ashore if required. We can conduct intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. So looking around to see what we see and then reporting that back.
The Vermont is 377 feet long, longer than a football field, 34 feet in diameter, and comes with a nearly $3 billion price tag. Sounds big, right? It is, but with 135 crew members living on it, sometimes for 3 months underwater, it's tight.
The biggest challenge living on a submarine is probably space.
This is a bunk room. It's one of the bunk rooms, right? We have a lot of space, right?
Not enough beds for everyone, so many submariners must alternate sleep times. It's called hot racking. The bed still warm from the last guy when you climb in.
You have to be used to getting close to people.
The boat is designed to utilize every inch of space, and most spaces have dual roles. The vessel's meeting room for administrators is also their dining room and surgical table, if need be.
This is called control.
But what we can't show you is what makes this nuclear-powered sub the Navy's best of the best.
Classified.
An entourage of top officials from Electric Boat and the military covered up sensitive equipment that could be stolen by adversaries, fiercely protective of state-of-the-art hardware and software they didn't want on video.
That's probably getting a little more specific than we want to get into.
This is an extremely rare look inside a submarine. In fact, we can't show you most of it for security reasons. But this is the control center, basically the brains behind the boat. And the pilot and co-pilot will sit here. But this is it. This is the end of the line. We can't show you what's beyond the camera, which you can't see, because that's off limits. Its missions, what it will do and where, also top secret. Officials won't say. But the USS Vermont will be capable of launching an attack with torpedoes, missiles, and payload tubes, allowing greater firepower while hidden by the sea. It will deploy an estimated 15 times over the next 33 years.
If in combat, this is where the orders will be given. This is where we would execute as necessary.
A maze of pipes, tubes, and wires right now, but the USS Vermont will eventually play a vital role in national security. And being on its maiden voyage is special for submariners. The first crew members become so-called plank owners. Their names put on a plaque inside the sub.
That's one of the reasons why I came here, right? How many opportunities did you get to be a plank owner, be the first crew of a ship?
It's why Todd Lewis volunteered on the Vermont. In fact, all submariners must volunteer. Training is rigorous, very difficult, and family and friends may not hear from them for months at a time. Once underwater, there's no contact. Communication restricted to military missions by just a few on board.
And what that does is it builds that trust between every crew member who goes through that process. There's no other feeling in the world than, you know, that thrill, that excitement that you train for, that you're ready for, that you want to do.
Ian Blackmore of Danville will also be a plank owner on the USS Vermont.
I'm just proud that I'm representing Vermont on it.
The Northeast Kingdom native is currently on another sub and just surfaced, though we can't say where. We talked by phone about what it means to be part of the first crew on a sub with his state's namesake.
It'll be kind of neat because, I mean, my name's always going to be there regardless of where I go. I'm just proud and happy that they named a sub after Vermont.
The rest of the crew members come from all over the U.S., but adopted the Green Mountains.
We have absolutely enjoyed the opportunity to be able to call ourselves Vermonters.
Jacob Newsome is one of the sub's pilots. He compares riding in a submarine to riding in a plane with sometimes heavy banks.
The floor kind of shifts as we change depth.
And says the first dive is always the best dive.
What's it like as a submariner to take that maiden voyage on, well, what will be the USS Vermont?
When we first say dive, dive, and we go down underneath, and there's just like that, you want to scream it from the rooftops, but at the same time, we still have a mission, we still plenty of testing. So it's an amazing feeling. I would say in one way it's like playing a video game, but then the floor starts moving and you start turning around, and it's quite a thrill to be able to know that you're moving 377 feet of American-made steel.
Construction on the Vermont began in 2014, and soon she'll be ready to dive. So a christening ceremony was just held at the Electric Boat Shipyard, a sparkling apple wine from Putney called Northern Spy. The Navy's former Deputy Assistant Secretary rallied the men who will call the USS Vermont home. The state's motto, now theirs too.
Help me share your motto with this audience. I've got the freedom and you've got the unity. Freedom! 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 Who are we?
The Vermont will undergo months of underwater testing before it's commissioned and ready for duty. That is expected to happen in the spring of 2020.
Oh, awesome. Thank you very much, Zachary. And thank you, Darren Perrin. That is a fabulous introduction to this show. So let me introduce our guests to you. Straight across from me is retired Chief Warrant Officer C. William Mattoon, but Bill, we're going to call him tonight. Welcome. We have Gary Freimeyer and Susan Martin, who are both on the commissioning committee for the USS of Vermont, which we will be talking about a lot in a little while. So could each of you give us a little background on who you are and especially how you got involved with the USS Vermont?
I'll start.
Go right ahead.
It's an interesting story. I'm a Vermonter since 1992. I came up here from the Hudson Valley, and I'm 32 years with IBM, and then I retired. And my son invited me to this thing called a Christening Ceremony for a nuclear submarine called the USS Vermont. He's a principal engineer with Capel, and Capel is the company that does the propulsion for Virginia-class boats.
Neat.
So he invited me to that, and we ended up going together. And at the commissioning, or at the christening event, I met Deborah Martin. And Deborah had recruited me to, she said, "You work for IBM, right? You must know something about websites." So she recruited me to do a website for the committee.
Nice.
And from that point in time, once you got involved and enthusiastic about the project, I became the chair of the gifts committee. I'm on the public relations committee and
That's
active with
what you get.
fundraising as well. Pretty much the definition of a
Yes.
committee.
Exactly. That's great. Were you here in Essex or down,
I'm in Williston.
Wilson? Oh, so you were at the Essex plant.
No, I
Williston.
actually traveled around the country doing a variety of different
Oh,
jobs.
did you?
but,
Oh, really? Great.
This was a great place to live, though.
Yeah, we were very sorry to see IBM go. I know a lot of good people had to go get jobs elsewhere, so
Understood.
we're very sorry. Anyway, Susan.
I'm Susan Martin, and as a committee member, I've been tasked with making a list of people who'd like to go to our Thursday event, which is an event to meet the crew for all Vermonters. It's free. I'm still taking names, so people have been calling me. Unfortunately, we don't have tickets available for the commissioning, but they can still come down on Thursday. I met Deb through the VFW auxiliary meeting, and she suggested I come to one of the committee meetings, and I did. And I passed around everything that I collected as a sponsor. I'm a sponsor of the USS Truxtun, and it was built in Pascagoula, and I commissioned it in Charleston, South Carolina. And that was 2007 and 2009, so it's been a while.
Very nice.
Yeah,
That's
but
great.
it's interesting for me to be behind on the other side of the table to see how this comes about, how the events comes about. There's many events that the committee is presenting to the crew. And of course the commissioning, when you commission this boat, Gloria Valdez, who is the sponsor, she will ask the officers and crew to come aboard and bring it to life.
Nice.
So this is actually bringing the boat to life.
That's great.
It's a big event, a big traditional event.
And Bill told me, we were talking about the USS Montpelier, that they're here a lot, the crew, and there's a lot of entertainment and welcoming them. And they and the crew from the USS Vermont were here at our 4th of July. I'm so upset I missed it. I was in Maine. But did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Crews. I would have come back if I had known that. That's great. Can you give us a little bit of your background as far as you were a Vermonter? I have to ask these questions.
I moved to Vermont in 1982, met a boyfriend, Barry, in 85. We've been together ever since.
Good job. Boyfriend Barry.
I'm a retired state employee for the Public Service Department for many years. And I'm doing a lot of volunteer work in my retirement life. I enjoy it.
Very nice.
Perfect.
From Barry, you know. They always say bar. Any of the advertisements that come from anywhere, they go, the Bar of Vermont, and we all sit there cringing. And you know when you're on a telephone with some answering service and they said, oh, bar, and it, no. No. Anyway, so Bill, you want to talk a little bit about your background?
I'm Bill Matteau. I was born in Barrie, raised in Chelsea, and went to Champlain College after high school.
Oh, perfect.
Graduated from Champlain. It was a 2-year college at that time. At that time, the draft was in full swing in 1966.
Right.
And so I ended up going in the Navy and going into the submarine service. Went through submarine school, got assigned to a ship down in Charleston, South Carolina, and eventually came back up to New London. Made 4 Polaris deterrent patrols.
Wow.
And got out of the Navy in 1970, came back to Vermont and decided to go back in the service. I ended up in the Coast Guard. And I retired from the Coast Guard after 30.
Where were you assigned in the Coast Guard?
Oh, gee.
All over the place?
All over the place.
Yeah.
You know, East Coast, West Coast, into the Caribbean, and the Bering Sea, out of the Aleutians.
Right.
So
it's a good part of the service, and they don't talk about, you don't hear much about the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
My cousin he lived in Brooklyn, but he was in the Coast Guard forever. I mean, he retired from there. Loved it.
It is. It's a good service.
Yeah,
And,
that's
Get to
great.
go to some cool places too.
Yeah.
surprisingly, a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of Coast Guard in the Midwest because of the river systems.
Oh, interesting.
Yes,
I would have never
they do
thought of that.
all the aids to navigation on the main rivers out
Yeah,
there.
well, that's true. I used to live for many years in Tarrytown, New York, and they were around there, and I just thought it was, because of its proximity to New York, was really my thinking of it, but that's great.
But how I ended up on the committee, I belong to a group of submarine veterans here in Vermont called the Green Mountain Base, as part of the United States Submarine Veterans. And Al Perry, who was a captain on the
Oh my God.
You know
We know
Al
him.
Perry?
Oh, yes, I haven't heard his name in years. I love Al.
Al has two sons that went through the academy, and were both submarine sailors, and both of them, attained the rank of admiral. In fact, one of them's on active duty. He pushed me into the committee per se.
Good. Well, he served in the legislature for years, and I was privileged to serve with him. Did you know Al Perry?
No.
Oh my gosh. Well,
so I got involved with the committee and said, there's got to be more submarine veterans out there. So back in February of 2019, I wrote a letter to every newspaper I could find here in the state, and we gleaned about 70 or 80 former Vermont or submarine sailors that are living here in Vermont. So, and they've been very active with the commissioning.
Excellent.
And,
are you still in touch with Al, or is he?
Oh yes.
Al. Oh, is
he's
he?
a committee member. Yes.
Well, you're going to have to let me give me his contact information, because does he know that we're here together tonight? Does he know that?
Yes, he does.
Oh, does he? Oh, I love Al.
You'll see him in your backyard again. He was involved with the resolution that's going to be read on the floor.
Oh, great. Oh, excellent.
Oh,
We'll have to
perfect.
be there for sure. Okay.
Very cool.
Oh, excited.
So a couple things about the boat we should talk about. So it's being built by General Dynamics Electric Boat Division in Groton, Connecticut, which we kind of covered in the video segment. And it's interesting. Can you talk a little bit about what type of submarine this is and what it's used for? I don't know who the best person is to take that question.
Everybody's looking at me.
Well, because they say it's the most sophisticated ever. So it's the best.
Well, every new ship they
say the most.
But
it's the Virginia class submarine.
Which, could you just stop it? What is it? Because there's a whole bunch of classes.
Yes.
There's 3 or 4 different classes. I wrote it down somewhere.
Okay.
What does a class mean?
A class, they classify ships by groups based on their design. You've got the Polaris boats, the Ethan Allen class. There was the Lafayette class. There was the George Washington class.
Wow.
These are all missile-carrying submarines. They're the Polaris submarines. The Ohio class, and a lot of them, through migration of time, technology improvements and stuff like that, treaties and stuff like that. Because some of them, when they do a treaty, they may end up saying you can only have so many boats. And so some of the other boats, as they get older, are retired. But the Virginia class is the latest fast attack submarine design. They are planning on having about 40 of them built over time. The Vermont is the 17th, I believe the 17th, 19th, getting up there. But it's a Block 4. In other words, when they talk about blocks, it's actually the design and the technology that comes along as they improve. So it's a Block 4 submarine. It's the first one off in that type. So the technology there and the stealth, you might say, capabilities and design and what they do and are capable of doing is
So each class has probably gotten better and more advanced, more bells and whistles and more stuff as it goes along.
Well,
Working diligently to be more cost effective.
Yeah. Oh, that's spoken like a true Navy guy.
Well, if you look at the first U.S. submarine was the Hunley.
Was it what?
Was the Hunley.
Oh, there you go.
It was a very small submarine, and to compare with the Virginia, I mean,
I meant to ask this before. You have to volunteer to be a submarine
Correct.
Because they don't just say, hey, you, because it may not work out for you. And
The submarine
it could be an
service.
ugly end to your career.
Submarine service is considered a volunteer service.
Right.
And you go through submarine school, you go through a lot of screening, psychological tests, passing the exam, and some people wash out.
Yeah, I would,
because
seriously,
they,
that would, I'd be the first one
they
to
can't
watch
meet the
it.
requirements.
Yeah. Well, if you don't see
Can't stand
sunlight.
up.
Well, you can't stand up or you can't see sunlight for
Right, exactly.
days or weeks
Yeah.
or months.
Well, actually, what they showed on the video was the bunks. And then you have to change, you have to coordinate your hours, so, because they don't have enough beds for everybody, so they change, and they had some name for the bunks, I can't remember, because they're warm from the guy before you.
They call it hot bunking.
Hot bucket, right, yeah, hot bucket, that's lovely.
In other words, you wake up the guy and say, it's my turn to sleep, and he goes on watch.
Nice and warm, very nice. So, and we talked about this before. They talk about it being nearly invisible underwater. Without killing me, if you tell me secrets, what makes it invisible?
Not totally invisible, but the capabilities of being quiet. The propulsion system is what they call a jet propulsion system pump. Before it was screws. Well, when screws turn, the faster they go, the more noise they make. It's called cavitation. And of course, if you've got a ship on the surface that's looking for you, with sonar, that cavitation is going to give you away. So the whole design of the boats and the type of propellers that they used or have used in the past got better and better as to try to take and negate that ability. Also, a lot of the sound through water travels many miles.
Right.
Yeah.
I used to stand sonar watches when I was in the submarine service, and it would be not uncommon to hear a vessel 100 miles away.
Wow.
And that is because of the way the sound travels through the water, and then you pick it up. So,
but if a boat's looking for the submarine and it pings, it wouldn't ping off the boat itself if they're right there?
So
they wouldn't see the outline of it on sonar?
No, what they do is they get an echo.
Yeah.
A Doppler effect. In other words, it would be like throwing something against the wall and it bounces. You hear it bounce back, and that's what they're looking for. Oh. And of course, we try to negate that. In other words, we don't want to be found.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
And
the design of the ship and the ability to negate the vibrations through the hull. Through design and stuff like that, has contributed to that. So,
it really is all about making the ship quiet.
Right.
Right.
It's,
but you see those movies where somebody makes a noise and trying to keep quiet, and everybody's about ready to kill them because it just goes forever.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why electric motors are quiet, and you have the cavitation problem that they've been working on for years. Right. And that's basically bubbles that come off the. Off the
propeller.
Yeah.
Off the screw. Yeah.
And you can hear
what happens is when the bubbles collapse.
Yeah, you can hear them.
You can hear it, and that's what makes that.
It is, and I'm not really negating anything here, but there were times we could hear it rain on the surface.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
The old studio, we heard people singing in the ladies' room next to us.
That's 50-year-old technology.
Right. These days, you could probably, It's probably.
So in the old studio, we heard a woman singing in the bathroom right next to us, right in the middle of the show.
There was a jackhammer one time.
Yeah, exactly.
To give you a sense of the security around the propulsor at the back of the boat, for the christening, it was shrouded.
Oh, so you couldn't see it.
You couldn't see it. You couldn't see the design.
Yeah.
When it goes in for a yard availability, they shroud a lot of that stuff so that it can't be seen.
Well, I think when they were in the what do they call it, where all the action takes place in the ship, the steering,
the control room.
They had it all blocked in the video, just covered, so nobody could hone in.
Yeah, certain gauges and that type of stuff. They don't want you to see that.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's some very sophisticated technology in there they don't want you to see now. They have something now called a photonic mask that took the role of the periscope in the past. And it's pretty sophisticated, but it's controlled by an Xbox controller.
Oh, no
which
kidding.
somehow or other,
My grandson could volunteer.
which somehow or other resonates with the 20 to 30-year-old crowd. They did a great job with
No
that.
more up Periscope?
No more up Periscope.
Oh, man. I've seen some great movies, up Periscope.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, well, that's what gives you away most of the time. You don't want to be at that depth.
Yeah, when you
if
get that
That's
big-
how you get spotted.
So there's nothing that pops out of the water that looks around, or what is this thing?
It's the significant thing about it is it doesn't breach the pressure hull. It sits, whereas the periscope in the old days would go down
right,
through multiple
right.
levels. This sits above, and it was released by a cable up to the top like a little buoy,
Oh, just very tiny.
and it can send the IR, it can do visual, it can do all sorts of
Wow.
message transfer, and there's a number of them on the sail of the Virginia-class boats.
So they have
Very nice.
multiple.
You'll see them in the pictures when we finally get them
Yeah.
Oh,
at
that's
commissioning.
great. Yeah.
One of the things I learned recently about submarines is that they all have their distinctive sounds.
Each submarine.
Each submarine has a very distinctive sound, so you can be underneath there and they go, oh, here comes Montpelier, or here
Really?
comes the Vermont.
Is that just because of the structure and the equipment inside, and
Not sure.
what makes it do that?
I don't know.
Is that true? What is that? Yeah.
Imperfection in manufacturing.
Spoken like an engineer.
Exactly.
It's like every car has a little
Oh, yes. Oh, I know that for
and
sure.
every mechanical thing has its own. And the Navy is very much aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
And they very much know how their submarines sound.
That's
And
amazing.
how other submarines sound.
Yes,
Right. Yeah, how other submarines sound. It's
Exactly,
also
the ones you don't want to run into.
Yeah. So you said this is a fast attack submarine, which is different than a deterrent class submarine, correct?
The missile, or the Polaris boat submarines,
Yeah.
or the Trident submarines.
The Tridents,
It's
yeah.
the Ohio class.
Or Ohio.
The
yeah.
Ohio class, which are much
bigger, yeah.
Much bigger.
And there's two flavors of them. There are the SSBNs that are the ballistic deterrent boats, and there are the SSGNs, which are guided missile boats as well.
Which fire tomahawks, right? Yeah.
The capabilities of it being able to, cruise missiles or the Tomahawk, which basically they can fire off and control. It gives them a much better capability. Something you may not have realized, I don't know if you read the Montpelier during the Iraqi conflict, was the first submarine to actually launch Tomahawk
I think
missiles.
I knew that,
Oh,
actually.
really? I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Great, good for us.
So
One of the two, and our other boat, the Ethan Allen, was actually the only Navy submarine ever to launch a nuclear weapon. They fired a test missile in 1962.
Really?
So those are the two unique things about our prior subs.
Yeah. So now people need to know, we have 3 submarines that are named the Vermonter, the Ethan Allen, and the Montpelier, right? And those are, they'll all be in service as soon as the Vermonter hits the...
well, the Ethan Allen is now scrapped.
Oh, sorry about that.
It was an old boat.
Yeah.
In fact, I served on an Ethan Allen class on the Thomas A. Edison. It was the Ethan Allen class submarine, ballistic missile submarine. It was actually the first designed submarine to actually be designed as a missile boat. The George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, the first 5 that they did, they took fast attacks, cut them in half, and put a missile compartment in them.
Yeah.
But the Ethan Allen was the first.
One of ours
actually
was
designed.
used just for storage, I read somewhere. One of them was used just for storage.
Yeah, the original USS Vermont.
What was
it
used as
started as
Oh, I read
Back
that.
in
Oh, the US, oh, the USS, oh, the first,
The first one was used just for storage for...
right.
It was
late in the
it
game,
was a
right?
76-gun ship of the line for a while, but
Oh.
when it actually got to work, it ended up being like a little floating warehouse.
Yeah, the history of
Not
As
very,
long
not,
as we were serving, that's it.
and
I'm sorry,
I was just
the
gonna
history
say-
on that was in 1816, I believe they actually laid the keel. But it was never commissioned until 1848,
Right.
or actually 1862. And by that time, technology had changed so much that they really couldn't use it as a ship of the line. So they redesigned it, and it looked like Noah's Ark. And it was used as a receiving
Just a
ship
little
and a
out of
training
date.
ship.
Yeah.
So.
Because we're talking back at the Civil War, where some
Yes,
of our...
and she wasn't struck from the records until 1901.
Huh.
So she was around a long, long time.
Good for
Wow.
her. Her and boat, I heard you have to call them boats.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you ready to go on to the second Vermont?
Yes, please, that's it.
So you said it's a fast attack submarine. They do still carry cruise missiles on them, right? Just not as many as a.
They carry Tomahawk missiles. I believe between 12 plus. This particular design has an extra space where they can actually have more Tomahawk missiles.
Yeah.
And torpedoes, right? There's
Well,
torpedoes
yeah. So
on
that's
them.
the primary function of a fast attack submarine is anti-ship, typically.
Yeah, it's basic. It's the initial design is to take out shipping.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are the torpedoes more for short range?
Torpedoes?
Torpedoes are long like them.
Yes, you would say short range. In other words, they're not going to reach out there a couple hundred miles.
Right,
They're going
it's just get the boat in the water.
It's going to be a line of sight in taking out
My father's probably
shipping.
listening to this up high. He was in the Navy. My uncles, everybody was in the Navy. So.
And they're also used for intelligence gathering.
Yeah.
Putting Navy SEALs on the shore if need be.
Oh, excellent.
So they're designed to not only be deep water but also be shallow water too. Again, this is shallow.
Right.
Yeah, which is what you would not use a missile, a bigger one of the
you
bigger
wouldn't
Ohio
use a big
class.
one for
Naked,
that.
right?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's cool. So I had asked, we have to talk about this because I got it wrong in my notes. The Secretary of the Navy that named the USS Vermont was?
What was?
Ray Mavis.
Ray
Mavis.
Mavis. So who was U.S. Navy Richard D. Spencer? Because he said something about Vermont that I was going to ask Bill to read because I just thought, well, that's us. But do we know what he?
I think he may have been in the department there as far as one of the higher ranking civilians.
Okay, because he says christened by Secretary of the U.S. Navy Richard Spencer. So maybe that was a while ago before us.
Well, as far as the naming ceremony was at Lake Champlain around 2014.
2014.
Yes, and that's where he and they actually said Governor. They said that that Phil Scott was there and 14, but that couldn't have been.
He may have been there, but not in the governor.
As lieutenant governor.
Yeah, that's true. He could have been. Maybe they just forgot the LT part there. But could you read? I just thought it was so cool that what Richard Spencer, whomever he may be, I just thought it was cool.
His quote was, "The future USS Vermont honors the contributions and support that the state of Vermont has given to our Navy and Marine Corps team throughout the years. For decades to come, this boat and the sailors who will serve on it will stand as a tribute to the patriotic people of Vermont and a testament to the value and partnership between the Department of the U.S. Navy and our industrial teammates."
Excellent.
And Vermont,
That's us.
and to go back on that, probably one of the reasons he said that is Vermont has had a long history with the Navy, or part of the Navy, and a lot of that being Lake Champlain.
Yep.
Oh, of course.
Two major battles were fought there.
Right.
One by Benedict Arnold at Valcour Island, which kind of stopped the British from getting down further south, and the Battle of Plattsburgh, which is the War of 1812.
Right.
And something you may not realize that during World War II, subchasers were built at Shelburne Boatyard.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what is it? You said sub-chasers?
Chasers. In other words, they were looking for submarines, German submarines during World War II off our coast.
Good
But
for
they
us
were
in
built.
Shelburne.
A lot of them were built there in Shelburne. Yeah. So,
Excellent.
So Lake Champlain and Vermont has had a big tie to the Navy.
In fact, I think the Valcour Island was the biggest naval battle of the Revolutionary War.
It was.
Yeah.
And it was a turning point.
It was a turning point. It was the first time that we'd actually repelled the British, which is saying something.
They didn't
memorable.
win. They didn't win.
They didn't win.
But it stopped them enough so that...
it slowed it. Well,
slowed it down.
Exactly. They didn't necessarily win, but they slowed them down enough that they didn't have the resources to attack the 40th and Allen.
Yeah. That's great. So I think we've sort of touched upon it, but maybe we could just be very specific about what the other boats were before this USS Vermont. There were two before, right? And if we could talk a little bit about...
What was the ship of the line?
Three. Yeah.
which was the Vermont, which was, I said, a 74 gun. The second Vermont was a battleship that was commissioned in 1904. The keel was laid down in 1904. I believe it was commissioned in 1907. And it became part of the Great White Fleet, which circumvented the globe.
Yeah.
She was used during World War I as a training ship, and after the war, brought troops back. Made several trips to bring troops back from World War I. And she was struck, I believe, in 1923 as part of the Washington Naval Yard Treaty, and when they were saying how many boats you can have and ships and all this type of stuff. But it's been over 100 years since we've had a ship named for the state of Vermont. We've had a lot of ships named.
And why was this name selected? Is it?
It was our time.
Seriously, is there a list that?
Well, the Virginia-class boats are all named after states. And there's a recommendation that goes from the Secretary of the Navy to the President, and that's how the decision's made. And I think because of our naval background and the fact that we were up to 19 of them,
wow,
it was our turn.
Good for us.
So we have one boat in the 1800s, one in the 1900s, and this is our boat for the 2000s.
Excellent.
Perfect.
That's good. I'm trying to remember, there was a shipyard in New Jersey for years, and my mother was a welder. Bayonne, yes. She worked there while the men were overseas, and she was welding ships at the shipyard. I have a lot of great pictures with my mother with her welding hat on. So anyway, those are some great stories.
Good memories.
Yeah. So Susan, you mentioned before that you were at another christening.
I am a sponsor of the USS Truxtun.
And what does that mean from?
I will be representing the Society of Sponsors down here at the commissioning. And as a sponsor, I belong to the association.
Right.
Along with, I call it the who's list of American greatest women.
Great.
For ships. We christen, we commission the same ship. Great. And I was just lucky that my ancestor, Commodore Truxtun, many naval historians believe that he was the true father of the Navy.
Oh.
He wrote many disciplinarian type of books, how to treat the crew and the officers in the Navy. And,
right.
And this was the sixth ship named after him. And my father wrote, after the fifth ship was decommissioned, my father, retired captain of the Navy, wrote the Secretary of Navy and said there should always be a Truxtun on the seas. He agreed, but he said, who would its sponsors be? And my father wrote him back, with my daughters, of course.
Oh, what a great story.
My sister and I are the sponsors.
That's great. Well, you've been asked to serve on the commissioning committee. That's a very hard two words to put together. The commissioning committee. What is the ceremony itself? Do we still do the champagne?
No.
No.
That's the christening.
That's the christening. Oh, of course.
What Gloria will do, she'll go up on a plaque, and she'll be on top of the boat, and she'll say the words, "Officers and crew of the USS Vermont, bring her to life." Oh. And for out of nowhere, the sailors and the crew will come and aboard the boat, and it's just an amazing feeling.
I bet.
Your heart is lifted. You just gave birth.
Right.
To this ship
You're going to make
in
me
the
cry
Navy.
on my own show here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I can't imagine.
They'll run up the aisle and go down towards the boat, and they're all got their hands right here, keeping the medals from flapping when they're running. Either that, or they're holding it over their heart. One of
the two. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And they all own a plank.
They all get a plank. It's a wooden plank.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll tell you a little bit about that.
Please do, because I thought that was fabulous.
Well, if you go back historically, back in the days when the ships were made out of wood, when a ship got decommissioned, if you were a member of the first crew, they actually cut up some of the planks from the deck and presented them to the folks that became plank owners. And that has become a tradition throughout the course of the Navy. And what we're doing for our plank owners, we'll have 137 crew members that will be there when the boat is commissioned. And each one of them will get a plank owner plaque that's created in the shape of Vermont. and has a lot of very unique Vermont flavor to it.
Oh, nice.
But they'll also get a certificate from the Navy honoring them as plank owners.
Right.
And we'll also be presenting some of the plank owner plaques to some of the crew members that were rotated out throughout the course of the project, and to other local dignitaries and people that sponsored and helped us with the mission of the committee.
Nice.
So it's, and they were created by Maple Landmark, a good partner, and there's probably 7 or 8 other Vermont firms that were involved in the creation of it.
Wow.
That's very cool.
So how many, you said how many people are actually going to be there since the tickets are gone? There's thousands, right? I mean, what is it?
We've been told the pier can hold 2,500.
Oh, before sinking? Great.
And if there's overflow, it'll go to the theater
Okay,
that's there
so
on
you
the
may have
base.
3,000-4,000 people there.
And talking about that, it will actually be live streamed. So that people who
We can watch
cannot
it.
get down there, right now we're trying to partner with the American Legion and VFW post in Vermont to hold maybe a ceremony at their post to bring in the public and live stream it through them.
Right.
If they get to the point of capacity or they're not going to do it in an area, we'll release that link so people can actually go to their computer and find it. And
Has
actually
Groton
watch it
never
live.
seen so many people with cars in their little town? Where does one park? I don't even want to know.
Well, some bases not that big.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
They do this regularly.
Oh,
Yeah,
do they
they're
really?
probably used
Oh, I
to
bet
this.
they know this,
They
right?
know how to do it.
That's great. Well, good for them. Good for hosting.
And how many? Speaking of the crew, how does the first crew, get selected, and how many of them are there? Like how many people does it take to crew a Virginia class submarine?
Each class is a little different. I believe the Montpelier has about 110 total officers and crew. The Virginia class submarines, I believe it's 130, 135, right around there. I mean, those numbers fluctuate because you've got people coming and going, during the life of the ship. But being selected actually is a process of rotation. When an individual comes up for a rotation, and he is getting assigned, and they're asked if they would want to go to a pre-commissioning unit, and there's a lot of work. I mean, when you take a brand new piece of equipment, they have to go through and learn that all over again, even though they've been qualified in another submarine.
Well, and I'm not being, but it's such a small space with all these people. You really have to know the routine, right? I mean, you can't be fumbling around with because they're all in very tight quarters.
The qualifications in submarine is pretty rigorous.
I bet.
The idea is damage control. If you're in a compartment, you need to know how to work most of the emergency equipment or the equipment that's in there to fight a fire, flooding, whatever the situation may be. Not only do you get every system signed off by somebody who works on that system, and once you do that, you take a walk through the ship by your division officer, and he's asking you all the questions. And then you sit before a board from anywhere from 4 to 6 hours, and they just continually ask you questions about damage control in the ship, how it operates, where do you find such and such a valve. Even today, I can remember certain things on the ship that I was on, because it's just ingrained into you.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's good for them.
So interesting. Each one, there's about 4 different horns or bells that go off for if there's a nuclear incident, if there's a fire, and the folks at commissioning will get to hear all 4 of them.
Yeah.
It's one
really?
thing
That
that
sticks
happens.
in your brain.
There's a lot more than that.
Oh, my word.
I did naval ROTC, and that was the first thing that they teach you is how to fight fires on a ship, because that's bad news.
Yeah, where are you going?
If you got a fire on a ship, that's not a good thing.
No.
So we were talking about the commission, which is on April 18th, but you said that there are almost 4 or 5 days of stuff happening, right? And maybe we could just go through that. I like the picnic idea. That sounds good. Are you the organizer?
Only on the Thursday event, thank you. But on Thursday at 4 o'clock at the Port and Starboard, it's a large restaurant in New London overseeing the river there.
I have been there.
And it will be opened up to all Vermonters free to come and meet and greet the crew of the USS Vermont. And so they've been calling me, they've been sending me emails Right now, I have a list of about 130 that have called me, reached out to me,
Right.
that are on my list. But that's just 130 Vermonters. It does not include any of the crew.
Yeah.
It does include some of the committee members. And my grandson will be there.
Oh, wonderful.
There will be children. There will
Yeah.
be children there. And
Okay.
I've asked for a children's area table for Thursday night because there'd be a bunch of people just talking and talking.
Oh,
What do the
nice.
kids do? So I'm having a table and some games, quiet games
Great.
for them to play.
And at that event is when we'll present the plank owner plaques to the crew.
Oh, cool. Nice.
We'll also have a set of gift bags that have a variety of Vermont products in them for the crew.
Excellent.
And also the sponsor, Gloria Valdez, will be bringing some of her own items for the crew as well.
Excellent.
So it's a great opportunity to build a relationship between the state, between the Vermonters,
For sure.
the sponsor, and the crew.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh,
And
that's
then
so
there's
exciting.
Friday,
Yeah.
which is the commissioning chair reception at the Marriott. And that's an invitation.
Invitation only, I would assume,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Right.
And many of the crew, the captain and his officers will be there. And then Saturday morning there'll be a closed breakfast for the sponsor and
Right.
for others. And then they'll ship us down to where the commissioning will actually take place on vans usually.
Yeah.
And some of us will be driving.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
Good,
And
good.
then the commission is at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, great. And the captain,
Yeah.
I'm assuming, has already been named and identified, and do we know who that is?
Captain Phillips.
Captain Phillips.
Yeah, but not the famous.
I was going to say,
Captain
whoa,
Phillips.
wait a minute. I think we know him.
Same name, different man.
Another Phillips.
Yeah.
One thing I would mention is the 40th Army, National Guard Army Band
Oh,
is
they'll be
actually
there?
going to be the band at the ceremony.
Oh, they are
So
great.
we do have a unique Vermont band.
Yeah, they're at the
going
State
there.
House in our, on a Wednesday night. We have these farmer night things, and they are incredible.
And of course, after the ceremony and all the pomp and circumstance, there's a reception. After that, immediately right there on the pier.
That's great.
And I believe a lot of Vermont products are going to be, you know.
Well, of course,
Forward.
it has to be.
Right,
I
right.
bet this commission's been together for quite a while, planning all
Yeah,
of this.
how long does this take to
This is
plan?
huge.
Traditionally, from what we've learned, commissioning committees are involved 3 or 4 or 5 years in advance.
Oh, really?
We started, Bill, when
I believe in around September of 2018.
Well, I can see
So
why,
they're about
seriously.
18 months in.
we were late to the game.
Oh, were we? But,
I did get a chance to go to the commissioning of the South Dakota back a year ago, February, and it was cold. Oh, it was cold. Hopefully, April is
Yeah.
going to be much better. But yeah, the pomp and circumstance, it just is unbelievable.
I know this is, we of course have Norwich here, and just when you were talking about the soldiers in Northfield, when they come marching over this hill, all together, I cry every year. I say to my husband, I'm not going to do it, and I see them coming down, and I just get, it's
That's
just
the
amazing
Labor
to
Day
watch
parade.
them.
Labor Day
Yeah, Labor
parade.
Day,
Yeah,
just
that's
marching like that,
wonderful,
and that's
There's
really
a
great.
Norwich graduate whose father is a chief on the USS Vermont.
Yeah.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh, that's fabulous.
It is.
Oh, now, this is serious. I got to watch this. So you've got, what we talking about, 15 officers, 120 enlisted, sort of, thereabouts.
Yeah.
And it's all volunteer. How long do they serve there? Do they, is it when they finally
A
say
normal tour
enough?
on a boat is 3 years,
3 years.
maybe 4 years, depending on the needs of the service. It's always based on the needs of the
Oh,
service.
for sure, right.
I said I made 4 deterrent patrols. The average patrol is going to be anywhere from 60 to 90 days, depending on what they're doing.
That's a long time under that water.
Yes.
I hope the food is good at least.
It is excellent.
That's what I hear. It's supposed to be good. That'll
Makes up for it.
That'll keep me
They
going.
make sure that those guys, we ate well.
Yeah, I bet.
Between the oxygen system and the propulsion system being nuclear, the only thing that makes the boat have to come up is
Every 4 years to sign a contract.
Oh, for food. Oh, well, there you go. Because that could just keep going forever.
it could
They never
stay-
have to come
yeah.
up. Except for me screaming down below, scream out,
Just to
get me
give
up.
you some idea of the logistics, loading out for stores, it was usually a 2-day event. They would do an initial loadout, and it was all hands except for the officers, the watchstanders, the chiefs. So you figure you've got about 70, 80 people loading stores in there, and they're packing it in wherever they can.
Right.
I was a storekeeper, in which I was responsible for the supply end of it as far as spare parts. We had about 40,000 spare parts of anywhere from 1 to 1,000 in
grief.
depth, depending on what the items was. So you can imagine, and it wasn't on a computer; it was on IBM cards.
Oh God!
Oh, my
Hopefully it's on
Lord.
computer now.
Yeah.
So listen, I wanted to, so we have about 7 minutes left, but I wanted you to talk about the calendar, and then we have to talk about Vermont Teddy Bear.
Oh, the calendar. Seeing that, I said, there's got to be a bunch of ships out there, because I knew definitely of 3. Okay?
Right,
3
yes,
Vermonts,
exactly.
and Ethan Allen, being in the submarine service. So I started doing some research and found about 23 different naval vessels or so that have carried Vermont names.
Really?
Yes.
That many. And that's not just submarines, that's all naval.
That's all naval.
Yeah.
From aircraft carriers to battleships, the battleship, the BB-20 cruisers, which was a Montpelier, was a cruiser.
So I see, is that Dewey on the?
That is Admiral Dewey.
Dewey,
And the
right.
reason that I put his picture on there is he is of course, I'm a native Vermonter.
Yeah.
He is the only admiral to ever be given the rank of Admiral of the Navy.
Oh,
And
no
that was
kidding.
bestowed on him by Congress after Manila Bay. And so, and that's the highest rank that they've ever awarded. So,
Excellent.
they had fleet admirals and stuff, but Admiral of the Navy, that's him. There is one picture in here that really isn't a submarine or a boat, and that is an individual. You might recognize Calvin Coolidge in that picture.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
And he is presenting the Medal of Honor to the first Medal of Honor recipient, a submariner, and the only enlisted individual to receive the Medal of Honor.
Wow.
When they asked him where he was from to credit the state, he had relatives in Grand Isle. He said Vermont. So Vermont got the credit for that Medal of Honor.
Wow.
Which Coolidge, I'm sure, was thrilled about.
Yeah, well, exactly. Speaking of Vermont.
And the kind of the unusual story about it, they had on a submarine down off Panama, and they were doing exercises. They got hit by a banana boat.
Oh, dear. Oh.
And they sunk. And he got off the boat and realized that one of his shipmates was sleeping in the torpedo room, went back down, sealed it off, and they were there for over 36 hours before they were able to raise the boat enough to open up the hatch and get him out.
Wow.
And unfortunately, Henry Barrault, he passed away just a few days before World War II.
Huh.
So.
Wow, what a great picture.
But they couldn't get all the pictures in there of the
And
ships.
did this committee put this together, or did you all part? Oh, he did. Ah.
Yes, with L. Brown and Sons, which
yes, we know them.
Which put them together. Here's most of the ships there. We also have a picture of the Lone Sailor, which is up in the park up in Burlington.
Yep, right.
I believe that's only one of 5 statues of that in the United States.
While you have that back part of the thing, maybe you could talk about the logo that you all put together. Do you need where is the big picture? I have that here. We'll put it on. We will put it on as you're talking if you want to reference it.
Yeah,
Long stretch.
I'll take that one.
You want to take that one?
Yeah, please.
I'll hold it up.
The logo is made up of the ship's crest. And the ship's crest was created by a gentleman by the name of Jason Watson from Knowles Atomic Power Labs. And it was accepted by Henry Ronke, who's the PCO right now of the boat. But that crest has so many different symbols in it that you would never acknowledge by looking at it. But I'll give you a couple, just so you're aware. This is an image of the first Vermont, the sailing ship. Here in the image in the background is the BB-20, the second one.
Yeah.
And for example, the Latin, Tuende Libertalis Expers Terroris.
I was trying to read that, thank you.
It means to show no fear in the defense of liberty.
Oh, love it.
Because this is a Block 4 boat, you'll see a lot of repeating patterns of 4 things in this picture. But it's, like I say, I could take 15 minutes to take that as well.
And the flag of 1776.
The Bennington flag on there as well.
And on the bottom, Vermont, freedom and unity.
Well, this is the ship's crest. This is the naval heraldry. This is the ship's crest.
Yeah.
For the committee, we took the ship's crest, we put it on a blue background because we have to change it a little bit to be able to use it. And then we attached the bottom of the state seal to it. And freedom and unity became a very significant part of the crew's mindset. When we did the christening, the sponsor, after she's finished breaking the bottle of Putney Mountain wine, when she shouted out, she said, freedom, and the crew all shouted, unity. They did that a couple times, and she said, who are we? And they said, Vermont.
Oh,
well, that was
on the video, I think. That was really,
absolutely. That was so powerful that a lot of the gifts that we've been involved with carry the freedom and unity theme along with them.
Nice.
So that's why we put this on.
You all have done a fabulous job. And we have to say thank you to the Teddy Bear Company, because we're going to show, as I'm talking, and speaking of Dewey, they called the little bear Dewey Bear.
They made a specific bear just for this.
Yeah,
right?
And there's different sizes, but it has the seal on it, the logo.
Well, Vermont,
do you have it?
Well, this is a
Vermont
T-shirt.
Teddy Bear was our first collaboration as a committee.
Really?
That
Aren't
was the
they
first part.
fabulous?
Bill
They're so
Schuldeis
nice.
stepped up, wanted to do something special for the military, and that's why he created those.
He's a great guy. I haven't seen him in years.
This is the T-shirt. This is.
Oh, nice. Now that's a whole different.
This is the.
That's not champ.
This is the ship's first coin image.
Stylized, yeah.
Seriously? Good for me.
And of course, the green. You know who that is.
I just said champ, but he's
that's it. That's
little
it.
guy we know is a little chubbier, but he's a friendly guy, champ, isn't he, champ?
But
That's a great
these
logo.
are T-shirts that a lot of people are looking for.
That is awesome.
Very cool.
Well, we have actually run out of time, and I can't thank you enough. Hope my dad's watching, because he'd be very proud of this show. I want to thank you all, and we'll maybe see you. We're going to work on that.
Leave you with one more thought, though. So a lot of the things we've talked about and a lot of the information is out on the website, ussvermont.org.
Right.
ussvermont.org.
Very easy to remember.
We will write that down.
But you'll see an awful lot of pictures, the events that we've done, a lot of the things are out there, and it's worth a check.
I was very proud to host you all. I think this is a great show. Thank you. Thank you all for listening and watching, and we'll see you next week. And in the meantime, keep listening beyond the sound bites.